Hey, welcome into another edition of Unlocked here on Disrupt the Media. Make sure you like and subscribe with Fox's Brock Huard. I'm Lance Taylor from The Next Round. It's brought to you by MyBookie. Use that code NEXTROUND. Secure a first deposit bonus on the house from mybookie.ag. How are you, my friend? We're rolling into week 4.
It's crazy, man. Time flies. Time is flying. October's right around the corner. Conference plays beginning. Get rid of this non-conference, especially week 3 of college football season, man. There were a bunch of clunkers out there, but it gets real fast this weekend.
You know, you were in Columbus last week, and that was one of my big games. I laid the points with Ohio State. I just felt like Cal McCord, if he was going to play, that's a game that he's got to show up in. And he looked to play clean. He looked to play well. Those receivers get great separation. I know it's a different animal. We're talking about Western Kentucky. But still, I thought Ohio State overall looked good. You were right there. You had an eagle's eye view for it. What'd you see?
Yeah, they look better than they had, I think, the previous 2 weeks, which shouldn't be terribly surprising with some new tackles and new components and new pieces and a play caller really trying to learn his quarterback. I think we all believe that, Kyle McCord's been in the place here 3 years. He started the game in 21 in C.J. Stroud's absence. Like Ryan Day knows him. No, you don't really know somebody until you're in the fire. Until you're actually just in the midst of just the most heated competition you can get, which are those 12 regular season battles for these teams. And yeah, that was a confidence builder, I think, for both play caller, for quarterback. Remember, he announced him as kind of his full-time starter last week. That's good. You get all the reps. Everybody knows there's no more competition. Let's go be at our very best. They were a little different animal than they faced this week.
Yeah,
little different animal in South Bend as far as just a sound defense. It's going to make you earn it. Going to be much more physical. Going to be a tremendous test.
You know, 99.9% of the time, Ohio State's got the advantage of quarterback. This is one weekend they don't. I mean, you're talking about experience. Sam Hartman in year number 6, he's thrown a touchdown pass in 34 consecutive games. I mean, this guy is, people were like, is it going to work? He was in that mesh offense with Dave Clawson.
Right.
It's going to work. The guy can play quarterback. I believe he's an elite college quarterback. So I think the advantage is there for Notre Dame. But overall, when you look at speed, can these defensive backs for Notre Dame keep up with what Ohio State has on the perimeter?
Yeah, I don't think any team in college football this year is equipped. Maybe Georgia. I mean, they've got a lot of talent on every level of their defense, but I don't. Yeah, to run with Marvin Harrison, 22 miles an hour, to stay in front of Emeka Egbuka, Emeka who's so good, Egbuka who's so physical. Throw in some of the other, young pieces they have as well. Nobody is going to just lock them down and feel comfortable. Every coordinator this year that matches up against Ohio State is going to say, okay, gosh, how do I make sure, I say deeper than the deepest. How do I make sure that I've got somebody accounting for Marvin? I watched it with his pops. Lance, it was interesting when my 2 years in Indianapolis, like you study all this tape, and Peyton was renowned for studying tape. I mean, just maniacal about it. But then you'd play the game, and that team would not play us like they played everybody else because you couldn't. You had to account for Marvin Harrison differently, and that relationship that Peyton had with Marvin differently than what you had shown on tape at that point. So Notre Dame will have a tremendous plan. They will make Kyle McCord try to at least go elsewhere, pound the football a little bit. Thought if you're an Ohio State Buckeye fan, that was the best news, how good Travion continues to look. Travion Henderson back to being the dynamic freshman All-American that he was. And if they're to win this game, Travion's got to be, to me, 150 plus yards, 125 plus yards. I mean, he's got to be just an elite difference maker, breaking tackles, making the difference, making plays for him Saturday.
You know what? I first saw Travion in 21. I was like, this dude's going to win a Heisman Trophy. Like, there was no weakness to the game. And then, unfortunately, injuries started to pile up, and Ohio State's got a lot of depth, and they've still got maybe 3 guys at the running back position that will play on Sundays. But Travion's next level. But on the other side, Notre Dame's been effectively running the football.
Yep. They just looked the part, right? I mean, both of them. When I saw Texas, I think I told you this after week 1, seeing Texas didn't surprise me. They went to Bama and went toe-to-toe with them because off the bus, as coaches love to say, right? Off the bus, you're like, do I want that guy or that guy? Like, they kind of look the same. And these Texas dudes go 8 deep on their defensive line, and they look SEC-esque up front on both sides of the ball. So shouldn't have been a surprise. Wasn't a surprise to see them physically match up. I actually was talking to Ryan Day about that in our production meeting, because I put Ryan Day Lincoln Riley, Steve Sarkisian as guys that the NFL are going to come calling for, and as also guys that know what it's supposed to look like. And that's what Ryan was saying in our meeting, like, man, Alabama, or, Texas just punched Alabama. Like they just, they physically like moved them at the line of scrimmage in a way that they had never been able to do in the past. So Notre Dame's finally there for Marcus Freeman. This team is built in the image that he wants them to be. Their O-line is better than Ohio State's O-line. D-line, probably give a little tip of the cap because of just the ceiling of the edge players and JT in particular there for Ohio State, but it's awfully, awfully close. And as you said, it's why maybe Sam Hartman's the tipping point when those other matchups are fairly even, the tipping point to the veteran quarterback that's been there and done it before.
This is live on the fly. I haven't asked you this yet. I'm going to assume that you are heading to Pullman for undefeated matchup with the Castoffs. You're not going to Oregon State, Washington State.
Close.
I'll pull that back in, though. Oh, Tempe?
Undefeated, ranked on ranked.
Oh,
it's a beautiful weekend, man. Salt Lake City for the Powder Blue of UCLA.
We talked about it last week.
That's okay. Don't worry about it.
Dante Moore. Well, tell me this.
So a lot going on, a lot of numbers in your head.
I teased this earlier today on the next round. I said, I think Cam Rising is playing based on the conversation I had with Brock Huard last week because he felt like they're keeping him on the sideline, getting him a little bit more healthy against Weber State and getting him ready for conference play. Will we see Cam Rising this week?
Lance, if you pinned me against a wall, life on the line, and said, who are the most challenging universities to figure out who's playing or not playing? Utah is number one on that list. I mean, it's just we meet with them for an hour. It's beautiful. Like Friday, I know exactly. I've been there probably 10 times. And we get Kyle Whittingham sweaty every single time. He walks into the room at 9:59 Mountain Time. He's got a towel around him. He's got a hoodie like this. He's either been on the Peloton. He's been on the treadmill. He's lifted. 1 year he swam. He has worked. It's well known that he's worked out every day of his life for like the last 6,922 days at that time on Fridays.
So he doesn't work out on Christmas though, right?
He does. Yeah, he doesn't miss a day. Yeah,
so legitimately 365. I've got days that I just, by principle, I will not work out. I don't know about you, but Christmas, I am not. Thanksgiving, I'm not going to work out. Christmas, I'm not going to work out.
I will ask him, but I'm going to guess he works out on both of those because those are still working holidays in college football most of the time. So I will ask him and get a definitive answer. But we get him from 10:01 to 10:20. Andy Ludwig, from 10:20 to 10:40, and Morgan Scalley 10:40 to 11, and that is it. And they give you everything you want. But as far as injuries go, it's going to be a game time decision. And in this case, with Cam Rising, 6 years there, multiple injuries, I found this a unique little wrinkle, that it's not a Utah trainer, that it's not Cam Rising or his parents, it's not Kyle Whittingham. It is actually the doctor who has to be the one to sign off on it. Wow. And that doctor is the same one that just did Aaron Rodgers' Achilles, Ella Tranche. I'm butchering the pronunciation, down in SoCal, where Cam's from. So he had the best guy in the world do it. And until he says yes, they are not going to let him play. My gut, my instinct is it's going to be this week. He's going to want to play, especially in this matchup.
We're Central Time. You're out. I think you're Mountain Time now in Denver. We're Pacific Time. So 2:30, the window here locally is a really good window. As bad as the action was last week, you're in that 2:30 window with UCLA traveling to Salt Lake City. So on that broadcast, if you could just mention it, you don't have to mention me, obviously. Kyle Whittingham does work out on Christmas and Thanksgiving. I would appreciate that. I know it's a shout out for everybody here at Unlocked.
Remember to ask about Kyle Whittingham Thanksgiving, Christmas workouts. I'm like Lewis Litt on Suits.
I love it. Unlocked with Fox's Brock Huard is brought to you by Lance'sLock.com. Jump on board. Football season is here. We will win for you. Again, we're coming off a 7-2-1 NFL slate this past weekend. I know we crushed it. We won in college again this week. We're starting to really dial it in, adjusting these numbers. Yeah, Lance'sLock.com. Jump on board. Try us for a day. Try us for a week. Try us for a year. We got great deals up at Lance'sLock.com. So Dante Moore, the kid looks like, and I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, that he's been playing college football for 5 or 6 years.
Incredible.
If Cam Rising doesn't play, I think you've got an underrated Chip Kelly defense. It's only giving up 2.2 yards per carry.
Yep.
You've got Carson Steele coming in from the MAC, who looks like
He-Man.
Power 5 football ain't too big for me.
No, he looks like He-Man.
Yeah. This is a really good – we talked about all these teams in the Pac-12. Nobody talks about UCLA. UCLA is legit, and they could actually make a statement here.
You don't like that He-Man. You didn't watch He-Man growing up?
I did. I watched He-Man. Man of
No, you
Arms
didn't,
was
Lance.
part of
You
that.
didn't like it. I can tell
Skeletor,
you.
I do.
Well,
Who
you
played
didn't really
He-Man?
like it.
Who was He-Man in the movie?
Don't know.
Dolph Lundgren. Seriously, you don't like He-Man?
Was he really? That's
Yeah.
my guy. That's
I know.
Drago. That's my
Yeah.
guy, Dolph Lundgren. Dante Moore, it is remarkable to me. I did say that to you last week. I don't know how, I mean, I do know how these 18-year-olds come into college more well-versed than ever before, because their high school programs like his out in Detroit was pretty well mature. 7-on-7, Elite 11, all these camps, all these competitions. So, you get to that level, you're like, yeah, man, I've played with these guys. I've competed against these guys. This isn't too big for me. I know these guys. I was an All-American Bowl with them, and I'm going to just fit right in. He's different than DTR. He did not look to run. And that's the one thing in this matchup. Last year, UCLA, Charbonnet ran for nearly 200 yards. And DTR didn't kill him with his legs, but his play action, his boots, his nakeds, all of that stuff, all off of the run and DTR's threat to run. This cat's different. This guy reminds me a lot of a young CJ Stroud.
Oh, wow.
They're similar built. They're like 6'3", 210. They've got just what I call posterior chains, which is a nice way of saying butt. They just got this legs and butt that are just solid, and it gets its feet in the ground. And you will see this. And we had our call with our director early in the week. I said, man, I want such a focus from our low levels and everywhere else, just on his feet, on his body, because it looks like, and it didn't matter, first game of the year against Coastal Carolina, when he gets in there and he's just slinging it. San Diego State, not a real hard place to play, pretty sleepy in San Diego.
Yeah.
So this will be his first test. And does he flinch? Because, Lance, when I tell you, like, he stands back there, like, you think of certain guys in their batting stance, like a Cody Bellinger, super upright, and just like his body doesn't move much. Other guys are, they're with the bats and, they're moving that thing around. It's all over the place. Same thing with quarterbacks. Some like to bounce, right? Some like to move their feet. He likes to just be cool as a cucumber, man, and just sit back there like no one's rushing and just fire. And his composure is off the charts. But it will be tested, in my opinion, right now in college football in the most hostile environment west of the Rocky Mountains.
Wow. Well, they've won 16 consecutive home. No, more than that.
They lost in 2020. As far as like real games, it was 2018. With the crowd there, it's been since 2018. UW, early in the year in September. Yep. So I kind of watched 2020, COVID year, no fans, crazy, like in a legit hostile environment. 50-some sellouts in a row. Like, it is a madhouse. Oregon can be a madhouse, and it will be for Colorado Saturday. Husky Stadium could still be an absolute madhouse, and even louder than Rice-Eccles when Oregon comes to town in a few weeks and everything else. But as far as consistently at 11 a.m., at 1 a.m., at 4 p.m., at 7 p.m., doesn't matter. For those folks in Salt Lake, Rice-Eccles has become a nightmare. And you can ask Caleb Williams about it. I mean, it was a madhouse when we were there last year, and it's going to be a madhouse. And this freshman will be put to the ultimate test.
Chip Kelly in his 4 years in Eugene was viewed as one of the top 5 coaches in college football. He comes back after a brief stint in the NFL, takes the UCLA job, and he's gotten better each and every year. And I think people have forgotten that Chip Kelly can really coach. And I don't think people realize, and you're close to the Pac-12, you played in the conference, and unfortunately, as we've talked about a million times, it's going away this year. But that is a difficult job. They don't have the resources a lot of schools have. And for me, Chip Kelly's done a really good job there, and I think they're a legitimate contender this year.
That's why you got an extension. It's hard because it's an off-campus. I mean, it's a crown jewel of college football. It is the Rose Bowl, but it's 35,000 in there for them. It's an off-campus. It makes it so hard on these schools. It's why if Mario Cristobal is going to sustain and maintain at Miami, I would continue to argue get something on campus. Hard to do in Coral Gables. There's not much land. There's a lot of rules and regulations, but just put something there, because if you think of Pittsburgh and you think of Miami and you think of UCLA, off campus is hard. It's hard to create that juice that you get at Rice-Eccles, that you get at Husky Stadium, that you get at Oregon. So you say resources, that's the first thing that comes to my mind. Give me 90,000 just passionate fans and make it brutal to come and play in your building. He doesn't have that. So to your point, he's got to make the most of it. He's an innovative offensive mind. I don't put him maybe just because of age in that same class as Sark and Lincoln and Ryan, where the NFL is going to come calling. They already did. He had that experiment twice in Philly and San Francisco. He's not going back there. But now in this transfer portal, he from day one. We had him in our seminar a couple of years ago. And unlike a lot of us old school, even some of the coaches that were just very against this whole crazy wide open free agency, he's like, no, it's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. Like, I can't wait. And he's done a terrific job with Sturdivant, the receiver from Cal. You mentioned Steele, the running back from Ball State. He's added in some of these pieces that want to come play in LA. USC receiver Ford that didn't fit at USC, but it's going to carve out a nice role there. And they're gonna move the ball. They're going to score some points. The question will be that defense. Those numbers to me don't match this game tape right here on my little iPad that I've been watching the last 3 days. Yeah, I've been watching some of these plays where it's like, ooh, and if they hit that, ooh, that's a miss. Ooh, San Diego State missed that one. Ooh, there is a bunch of misses, and their corners have really struggled out on the perimeter at times. So, yeah, if it's Cam Rising playing, they're going to score some points on this defense. They're going to move that ball. If it's the redshirt freshman playing, now it's going to be a dogfight down to the very, very end.
It is Fox's Brock Huard on Unlocked right here. Disrupt the Media. Like, subscribe. It's brought to you by MyBookie. Use that code. Next round, secure first deposit bonus on the house at mybookie.aj. Let's jump around a couple of more Pac-12 games before we get to the NFL. You mentioned Oregon. They are hosting Colorado, the story of college football. So fun to stay up till 1:15 local time for me, watching the double overtime win. Shadur Sanders was incredible.
Yep.
I thought it was really interesting. Deion decides to take the ball in overtime. We've never seen that before.
Nope.
They get away with it. I thought it was interesting. Jay Norville didn't go for two.
Agreed.
You can question that all day long,
Yep.
but they're still undefeated. Now they head into Oregon. They're 21-point underdogs. I believe they're 21-point underdogs for a reason. I think Oregon scores 60+ on this Colorado defense. I think Deion's already made Colorado their money, or Colorado's made their money off of Deion.
Yeah.
I think he has cemented himself as a guy that is going to be a problem for other coaches and other teams moving forward. So I think they're playing with house money. With all that said, I do think Oregon is a much better team, and I think Oregon will score with ease. What is your thought on the game in Autzen this year?
Yeah, it feels, kind of feels like a 50-30, 56-35. Colorado's going to score. Oregon defensively has still, to me, some limitations and a lot of prove it. Like Tosh Lapoy, the D coordinator there, is got to prove it. They've got transfers that have come in. They got elite speed. They will match step for step, something that TCU, Nebraska, certainly Colorado State from just a pure speed standpoint could not do. But you started to feel, and you felt it the last 2 weeks, if you've watched those games closely, you have started to feel, you didn't feel it at TCU. And I think a lot of that was opening week, don't know what we're going to get. And Shadur and the fully loaded team just had TCU defensively on their heels all game long. Nebraska, they hit them. And if they had any help offensively, that could have, should have, would have been a 4-quarter game as well instead of the blowout it became. But you have felt just that pocket around Shadur, right? You could just see him getting hit. He took some shots. I mean, that shot to the chin and the shoulder, to me, I was like, oh, no, get up, get up, get up. Because that's an AC joint waiting to happen in the separated shoulder when he landed right on his throwing shoulder. So that's why it's a 20-point game, is just eventually those lines of scrimmage that are thinner, that don't have the bodies, that can't sustain once you get to elite conference play, and they get thrown right into the fire with Oregon and then SC. So yeah, it's gonna get a little real, and I, for one, can't wait to see how Deion handles some adversity.
Yeah,
like
well,
real
he's
adversity.
already, it was all personal until this week, and then they brought up the Dan Lanning. Hey, Colorado hasn't done anything in this conference, and he backed it up a little bit. Like, hey, that program's really good. He wasn't talking any shit this week, and I don't blame him. I stay away from that 100%.
Yeah.
The Castaway Bowl, though, that I brought up earlier in Pullman, two teams that don't have homes next year, and two teams that are really good this year. Oregon State, Washington State, as predictable as we think Oregon will be over Colorado. This is one of those games. I don't know. Cam Ward's playing great. Yep. We talked about Jonathan Smith's a great coach. They play fundamental football. I thought they were looking ahead a little last week, although they get the win. It didn't matter. Mm-hmm. But this should be a hell of a game.
What is the line on this one right now? Is it moved at all?
I think it is I think it's Oregon State 2.5.
Yeah. Oregon State 2.5. Yeah. That probably feels right. I mean, I've got a lot of friends, Lance, not as, how can I say that? I don't have as many Coug friends as I have Husky friends, obviously, being on the west side, but I got a lot of them. It's really, really close. And I've gotten a tremendous feel for the emotion of that Washington State fan and what it means. And they have a few of these opportunities, national spotlight, game that will follow us on Fox. Everybody's going to be watching.
They did it against Wisconsin.
They did. And that helps. The only concern I have for Wazoo is they can rush the passer. Like, they can get after the passer. Their two edge dudes are legit players and, probably going to be late draft picks and in NFL camps next year, Stone in particular. So they can get after the QB. Can they stop the run? And Oregon State will go in there and attempt to pound the football. DJ took a little step back last week. He was not as efficient as he's been, threw a couple picks, started to just confidence-wise. And we saw that at Clemson as a guy with some peaks and some valleys. So if somehow, some way, Wazoo gets the safeties up and they somehow, some way really do consistently stop that run, they can win this game. They're going to score. I think this is going to be a game in the low 30s, right? And if they can just stop that run and put it on DJ, that's how they find a way to win it. And if I'm DJ, man, for my teammates, my peers, my locker room, this is it right here. Like, this is a big one. Like, okay, we're undefeated. We're ranked. People are feeling pretty good about us. We're playing pretty good ball. But if I'm DJ Uiagalelei and I left Clemson and I left all of that hype to come to Oregon State and do my job and do my business and be an NFL dude, like, this is a stage. This is a venue. Going to be hostile. This is a time where I earn the respect of my peers. Like, let's go. And it can mean a whole lot for the rest of the season.
And this is one of those games. If it would have been last week, it would have been the marquee game of the weekend.
Yes.
A lot of people, casual football fans, will look at it and they'll be like, Oregon State and Washington State, these are two legitimate teams. It'll be a really fun game to watch. Damian Martinez, one of the most unknown running backs in college football for Oregon State. And you're right. If they can slow him down, that could be the difference.
Yeah, I would not bet against the Cougs. I really wouldn't. Cam's going to make some plays. You've got to understand some of their mindset, which is the world is against us. And even though it's the other team who has been as hurt in this whole process as you have, I don't think they'll be sentimental. I don't think they'll have any pity. I think they're on a warpath. And especially at home, if this game was in Corvallis, I think it's a 10-point game to the Beavs. The fact that it is in Pullman, in that place, and strange things have happened in there. They just beat Wisconsin a couple of weeks ago. They do have people on the edges that can create some chaos. If they can just efficiently stop the run and put it in DJ's hands, advantage Cougs.
It's Unlocked with Fox's Brock Huard. It's brought to you by MyBookie. Use that next code. They use the code NEXTROUND and secure that first-time deposit bonus. It's on the house at mybookie.ag. Week 3 in the NFL coming up. I got to start with my Rams. And this is one of the problems. If you don't watch the game, you see numbers sometimes, and they're a little misleading.
Yep.
There were 2 picks that Matt Stafford threw. They weren't his fault. And without those 2 picks, one hit Kyron Williams right in the hands, bounced up, led to 7 points for San Fran. The other was a route. I think Van Jefferson cut it short, and the ball's picked off easily. Not Stafford's fault. He's playing great. He's playing great without Cooper Kupp. We've talked about Puka Nacua, who is just awesome. He's just come on the scene, man.
Awesome.
Just dominated 25 receptions in 2 games, which is incredible. But I hate losses as a Rams fan, but I came out of that thinking, damn, this team is good. I really think without mistakes, and if they can stay healthy on the offensive line, this team will be a good team because San Francisco is legitimate.
Yes to everything that you just said. We talked about this going into the opener in Seattle, right? You kind of framed it like, is this a Rams team that's a 5-win team that's just in rebuild with 43% of their roster being first or second year guys? Or are they kind of a little dangerous animal with Stafford and a motivated McVay and young, impressionable, motivated guys trying to show that they do belong in this league? And it's been a whole bunch more of the latter. Great win up in Seattle, one of the better wins for a road team in this league, and then going, tooth and nail with San Francisco. So as long as Matthew Stafford is available, right, as long as he is upright, as long as that elbow holds up, as long as his body feels good, they got enough offense. They got enough trust between McVay and Stafford. They're further enough along in their playbook to get to the things that they want to do each and every week. They are going to be a problem offensively. But I can't think of another team in this league where if you were to say, and injuries happen to everybody, every one of these teams in the NFL, and we saw it Monday night, is going to lose prominent starters, difference maker. Seattle lost 2 tackles, playing with 2 new tackles in Detroit. So it is the 45 guys that are active. It is the roster that can go 45 deep and sustain. That's going to be the problem, I think, with your Rams, Lance. I think this is going to be a viable September. I think it could even sustain into October. But you know, and I know, you're going to lose a half dozen guys. And that roster, of any of them, if you said rank them, which can't afford to lose prominent guys, it is probably the Rams right near the top of the list in the NFL this year.
Well, Joe Noteboom goes out and 2 immediate sacks right after that. And first time Stafford had been touched this year. So I'm in a small minority here, but I have never been a fan of Sean Payton. I know he won a Super Bowl in New Orleans. I saw 3 consecutive 7-9 seasons with Drew Brees. And now you get the Hail Mary. And I had checked out late. And I had gone to this Mexican dive restaurant, and I was watching the end of the Commanders and Broncos. And I just thought it was so fitting. They get not only Russell can't get it to the end zone, they get the perfect tip play, and then they can't convert the 2-point conversion. You're right there in Denver. You host a show. Yep. What is the temperature right now? Not for Sean Payton necessarily, but just for this organization in general.
Unbelievable frustration. I don't think people on the national level understand that the Denver Broncos, from a credentialed standpoint, have as much media or more than any other team in the NFL. I think at one point it was actually number 1, even ahead of Philly and New York and some of those markets. So the attention, when I was up in Seattle and I made my home there, 2 of the 3 major networks didn't have sports, right? King 5, the NBC affiliate, still had a dedicated sports anchor and number 2 and covered sports. The ABC and CBS affiliate went away from full-time sports and just kind of had a consultant. And Denver, every single station, ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, multiple people at all of those games, multiple post-game shows, let alone all the blogs, all the radio, 3 different radio stations in Denver. So it is a hyper intense. The national market, media folks, or the national fan don't get that. But it is one of the most intense markets on their Broncos that you find in the NFL. And they are, you saw the stadium at the end. They had booed their way out. They are so mad at the product and how this product for the last 6 years, after being really proud and winning Super Bowls with Elway and a Super Bowl with Peyton, has really fallen on brutal times. Haven't beaten the Raiders in 7 games, like 4 years. Haven't beaten the Chiefs in even longer than that. So it is frustration. It is ticked. It is then watching timeouts and late out of the huddle, all of the chaos that's going on. It's not going to be long before you see some of the animus and the vitriol and what you're talking about. I don't love Sean's negativity, right? Either to the league or to peers or even to some of his players. It's going to come out because that division's brutal and they have not answered the bell the first 2 weeks out.
Hey, and I'll tell you, if I was another fan base right there in the AFC West, if I'm a Chargers fan, I'm looking at this, and look, I liked Brandon Staley. I liked he was a kind of a gambling coach his first year out after he was DC for the Rams taking over the Chargers. But the fact of the matter, it seems like any close game they're in postseason games, they can't win. You've got what seems to be an elite quarterback in Justin Herbert. Now you go to Minnesota and you've got 0-2 versus 0-2. And in this league, you dropped to 0-3. It is almost impossible to be able to get out of that hole and get back into postseason conversation. But what's going on right now with the Chargers?
Yeah, it is going to be that's a desperation bowl out there, and probably even more so for the Chargers, right? I think out in Minnesota, head coach, young coach, got a little equity last year and getting to the playoffs and winning, and I think when it's said and done, that NFC North's going to beat each other up a little bit, and who knows, maybe a 10-win team can win that division between Green Bay and Detroit and Minnesota. That's not going to be the case out west. Kansas City is is still Kansas City and still got Mr. Mahomes so this is a must. I can't. You help me out here, Lance. For Dabo, it was Clemsoning. Like, we got to get over this Clemsoning, right? Like, we got to get over this. Is there another team in the NFL that has more like chargering? Oh, Chargers going to Charger. Doesn't matter who the head coach is. Doesn't matter who the personnel is. Like, they're the Chargers. They're just going to find a way to screw it up in the end. I don't think that curse hangs over any other team in the NFL.
It's so talented. My gosh, when you look at their skill, it makes no sense. And look, I know it was really close against Miami, but when they got the ball in that final possession, I didn't think they were going to score.
It's been really close in both of those. It's down to the wire. Both brutal, absolutely brutal, just punch to the gut kind of losses. But that's what unfortunately, until you get over that hump, until Dabo, he can yell and scream and this old, Clemson thing, it's over. No, it's not over until you actually do it, until you actually go and win those games. You don't get to say it. The record says it. The new people then don't even remember that. I'm sure there's even, parts of your young audience here that's Clemsoning. What's Clemsoning? I've never even heard of Clemsoning. No, that was a real thing for a long time for those guys. Just as charging, unfortunately, has been a real thing through multiple coaches, multiple staffs, multiple personnel, and they've just simply got to get over that hump to shut it up.
And I don't know what the number is. It's probably 90+% on NFL games that come down to a final possession. Look, you playing in the league, what's it like in those final 2 or 3 minutes? Just the intensity of you work so hard. You've only got 17 of these games, and you work so hard all week long, all summer, the off season, and it always comes down to a field goal, a 2-minute drill.
Yep.
Just how intense is it?
Those veterans know it, right? I mean, the veteran teams just know it. Like, it busts pipes or makes diamonds. And Geno Smith, I mean, he had an unbelievable game. You talked about if you didn't just watch the game, you just looked at the numbers. Well, the numbers were astronomical. But if you watch the game, Lance, he had one negative play. Truly. I mean, on his grade sheet, it had to be the highest grade that he ever had as a Seahawk. He was that dialed in. The ball was out. He was accurate. He was every single level doing what he had to do. He scrambled a few times. But then, final 2 minutes, guess what happened? Right? He took a 17-yard sack to the 2-yard line. He kind of lost track of time and space and was thinking, well, I don't want to throw it away because a 2-minute warning. I want to make them burn a timeout. You're like, no. No. Oh, God. Oh, no. Oh, no. I'm like saying that to don't do that. Don't do that. Throw it away. Doesn't throw it away. Takes a sack, 2-yard line. Thankfully, the defense at least holds them to a field goal to get the game to overtime. So, yeah, you see, what do they say about pitchers? When it gets to the playoffs or these big moments or the late innings, that game will speed up on you. And the game is already fast, but in those final 2 minutes, those decisions, those judgments, and just the pace of play, man, the game will speed up on you unless you take that breath and slow it down.
You were talking about charging. Some of the most jinxed organizations, you've already seen the Jets lose Aaron Rodgers, the Browns lose Nick Chubb.
Yeah.
But another one of those jinxed organizations is the Detroit Lions. And there was so much hype coming in, and they look like your clear-cut NFC North favorite. But that defense still isn't there, is it?
No. It's still thin. It's still, we'll see. Aaron Glenn is been a name that's gotten a lot of attention and head coaching interviews, but he's got to do it. He's got to get his guys. They win in Green Bay to end the season and knock the Packers out of the playoffs. They win in Arrowhead to begin the season. Yeah, I mean, I think that hype's deserved. That building and talking to Seahawks personnel and people, it was ludicrous. I mean, it was everything that Dan Campbell said it was going to be. I mean, it was a madhouse, nut house. They want a winner. But, yeah, man, they still just personnel-wise. And then this week they lose Montgomery and you lose Amon-Ra St. Brown possibly to a toe. And you played without your left tackle and your right guard got banged up, man. It ain't college, brother. All right, you don't got 85 dudes. You can't run out a whole second O-line and a whole second D-line. It just doesn't work that way. You have limited numbers. And when you start losing people, well, guess what? The league gets back to 8-8 or, I don't know, 9-8 or 8-9 with this ridiculous 17-game schedule. But it starts to even out exactly the way everything is built to do in the league.
I know it was the Giants and the Jets with a backup quarterback, but Dallas has looked lights out. I mean, could you say this early on? It was AFC and everyone else. And the Eagles were actually your favorite from the NFC coming into the year after going to the Super Bowl last year. But does Dallas maybe look like the best team in the NFL right now?
You know who's really good, Lance? Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn's really good. I think he's taken his name out of a few head coaching spots. I don't know when that next gig or what exactly he's looking for. I think he knew what he had in Dallas. Is like, yeah, I don't need to interview in Denver. I'm not looking out there. I got a pretty good deal. I mean, he is, to me, one of the guys like Pete Carroll that understands mentality. Brandon Staley knows X's and O's. And when I sat with him a couple times when he was the D coordinator with the Rams, the year I was doing the NFL, I left those meetings going, this is a head coach, and his X's and O's are so good. When I've been around Dan Quinn, his X's and O's are so good, but he's one of the few that gets this. Old D coordinator at Iowa State, John Haycock, so good. Sat with him for the Iowa game, and he cut his teeth with Bo Schembechler. And this is one of those like perception and realities that will kind of skew your thought. You think Bo Schembechler, you think Vince Lombardi, old school, right? Just eat glass, just tough. And he was like, Bo Schembechler was so ahead of his time because he said it's 4-1. The mentality and getting guys mentally ready to play, not schematically, mentally ready to play was 4 times more important than any scheme we can draw up. Haycock has lived with that, carried that, is at elite defenses the last decade at Iowa State. And Dan Quinn and Pete Carroll and some at the very top, Andy Reid at the top of the food chain, Sean McVay, I think, Kyle Shanahan, they get that the X's and O's are super important. But if we miss on the mentality and having our guys mentally in the right headspace to play, and I think Dan Quinn is phenomenal. The best assistant, the best D coordinator in that way, and his group has played and proved it the first 2 weeks.
So the Bengals were 0-2 at this time last year. It feels a lot different with the calf, the strained calf. Going into Monday Night Football, right now Cincinnati's a 1.5-point favorite because nobody knows whether or not they're going to rest Joe Burrow.
Yep.
How bad is that for a quarterback?
Sucks.
And does he need to sit for a couple of weeks to get that thing 100%?
I mean, they tried that, Lance. I mean, that's the hard thing with that injury. They tried that in training camp. That happened early in training camp. How long did he sit out? 3 weeks?
Yep.
You know, I mean, that's probably some of their thought process. Like, geez, I mean, we already did this once, took care of it, gave it the time and gave it the rest. But the problem with that injury, it is so fickle. And just when you think like, okay, we're good, you know, one step, one movement, like, oh my gosh, and now we're reset all the way back again. So I don't know if there's a definitive answer. They've got the best of the best, Joe, I'm sure, not only with the Bengals, he's got his own people and the best of the best in MRI and evaluating and what can we possibly do to make sure that this thing doesn't hamper me, because we've seen him get beat up, you know, when fully healthy. And if he is compromised at all, then you're putting other stuff, right? Then you're putting an AC joint, then you're getting a hit, then you're just dealing with other things that you do not want to happen. So yeah, we'll see what judgment there is made. But yep, back to what I said 5 minutes ago. You pluck away one player here, you get one injury there, and oh my gosh, is it amazing what it can do to your dreams and aspirations at that level.
Yeah, and back to it, man. Fox 2:30. Brock will be on the call. UCLA, Utah. It's 2 undefeated, top 25 matchup. In injuries, we will see if Cam Rising is going to be out there. Can't wait to see it. Safe travels. Enjoy it. And it should be one of those weekends where we get a good barometer, a good gauge on a lot of these teams, and we'll obviously get into it next week right here on Unlocked.
Can't wait, man. These hours fly by with you. These shows fly by, and you're right, man. This is getting to conference play largely. I know Ohio State and Notre Dame's not conference, but it might as well be, because it is going to be eye-opening for all of us to kind of a discovery weekend. We get to discover who is really what they think they are, and can't wait to talk with you about it next week.
And enjoy the week, and hopefully your Mariners will continue to play good baseball. We'll see.
Let's go.